Hey there, YouTube. So, due to technical difficulties, I'm still recording things on my cell phone. Yeah. So, I didn't give you guys any updates on the beta Ray Bill costume as I was working on it. So, this video is going to be catching you up on everything I did leading up to Comic Con and also how it went wrong at Comic Con and what I need to do to fix it. Uh, Now, half of that question on how I'm going to fix it is going to be what do I want to fix it for? If I'm not going to wear Beta Ray Bill at another con, which is a possibility, but I think I'm talking myself into it, then I don't have to worry too much about quality of life changes like being able to see and comfort and everything like that. I definitely want to get it fixed back up and improved at the very least to take a good picture of it, because there aren't any really good pictures of it, because a lot of it was terrible at the convention, and yeah, I'm pretty angry with myself for that. And it turns out that's my motivating force for a lot of things is anger, self-discovery through cosplay. So let's talk about the face first, because that's the good stuff. That's the impressive part. Which I'm not going to have him on, the styrofoam head this time. I'm just kind of going to show you the mask by itself. So I'm pretty happy with how the texture came out. What I'm not as happy with is in previous videos you could see that it was fairly flexible. You could see me talking. You could see my mouth moving as I was talking. Unfortunately, in making this, kind of the steps I went through, is I added all of the craft foam scales, the schnoz, and around the eyes and the chin are made out of Model Magic, that kind of soft, squishy, air-drying Crayola stuff, which I've used before. I like it all right for some stuff, but it has its own problems to work with. And if I was feeling particularly ambitious for editing, I don't know as I did, a montage of me sculpting that will have appeared in the background of this video. Yeah, so filling in the gaps between those two, and as the first layer of paint was a layer of orange fabric paint. Now, that did a really good job of making it look a lot more homogeneous, like it was all part of the same material. Unfortunately, because it's the Model Magic, the craft foam, and the morph suit underneath, and kind of filling in the edges of the scales around the morph suit reduced a lot of the flexibility of the mask. So if I had done less of that, it still would have been more flexible, so you could see me talk a lot better. I might be able to go back and fix that, but I'm going to fiddle with that, and I'll let you know if it works out. As for the teeth were made out of air-drying clay. I didn't want to do that. I knew that was going to be a really brittle material, and there was going to be breakage, and you can see, there that there has been a little bit of chipping, and I, in fact, lost 2 teeth at some point during my escapades at Comic-Con. That's not going to be too hard to fix. Now, the excuse I made for myself was that I could go back and fix the air drying clay with Bondo, but completely sculpting the teeth from scratch out of Bondo would have been really, really difficult, particularly on top of a mask that had already been built. Any spillover would have been not disastrous, but a massive pain in the butt. And a lot of my decisions on working on this were motivated by the fact that I was running out of time. I was spectacularly running out of time. I should have been working harder on it, and I wasn't. So that's one of the biggest things I'm angry at myself for, and is making me work on it now, is being angry. So that's healthy, right? That's great. I want to do some more interior structure inside the mouth, but that's not my highest priority, but that is something I hope to do. So I mentioned in the other video, and I'll try not to be too redundant between these two videos, I had some serious fogging problems. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the back of this inside out, which I can do without hurting the mask, and kind of give you guys a look inside. So the frontmost layer, when you're looking at it from the outside of the eyeballs, is a set of glasses, and inside that is a layer of really, really gauzy fabric. So what was happening was that was collecting moisture. That was collecting tiny, tiny droplets of moisture And yeah, that just obliterated my vision quickly. So I was shoving like this fan in my mouth to try to blow off my eyes on the second day. On the first day, I didn't have this piece of foam in place. So the first day, I like immediately lost all my vision. On the second day, I had a fighting chance with a fan, and it wasn't a great fighting chance, but it was a fighting chance. So I added this piece of foam, and it was incredibly. It was not fun. Here's a picture of what I looked like when I pulled the mask off with all the lovely pressure marks this leaves on my face. Fun stuff. So that is going to be my biggest challenge for modifying this and repurposing it for wearing it to another con. At least, structurally and functionally, and, I had a really good term for that earlier, but it's gone now. Anyway. Yeah, so if I'm not getting the movement out of the jaw and the face, the hooks going into my mouth, which are what you can see here, are actually useless. So I might end up pulling those off if I can't get the motion back where I want it to be. I have some ideas on how to do that. I'll probably fiddle with that a little bit, and I'll let you know if anything pans out on that. I won't go too much into what I'm thinking about trying on the lenses, because I don't know if it'll work. I'll only let you know if it works. So let's talk about the arms, which turned out pretty well. I decided to attach the wrist piece onto the arms just as like a comfort and structure kind of thing. So, the nice thing is these Velcro onto the shoulder, so I could pull these on and pull them off at any time if I was too hot or too uncomfortable, in the middle of a con to take a break. And where I was incredibly sweaty and incredibly uncomfortable, that was peanuts compared to not being able to see. So I just kind of ignored that and was more frustrated about other things. Truth be told, this was actually really pretty comfortable when I was outside and moving around. You could just feel the wind whistling right through it. It was great. Now, of course, when you get inside the convention and there's packed bodies and there's a lot less airflow, it was a lot more miserable, and there was quite a bit more sweating going on. I'll go ahead and slip this on for a sec, just so you guys can get like a little bit of a feel for what it looks like in motion. Unfortunately, yeah, my camera doesn't have a great field of view, so it moves really well, particularly compared to some of the stuff I've tried on my Thor scale arms. This really feels like an extension of what I did on those. Because I had the thought, when I was watching some Mass Effect stuff, I've actually never played any of the Mass Effect games, but I'm aware of them, and I've always liked the design of Garrus. I'm going to look like an idiot if that's not his name. But yeah, Garrus, light blue guy, kind of lizard cat looking, I don't know. But when I was working on Bill's face and when it was still moving, I was thinking to myself, this exact same system would work great for a lot of other alien faces, like Garrus. And, that's another thing where it's like, I'd like to build that someday. I don't know if I ever will, but I'd like to. But that's burying the lead. Going back to that, I was looking at a lot of the structure of the alien skin in Mass Effect, and it, was pointing out to me that the texture isn't the same throughout. Like around the joints, it clearly looks like the skin is easier to move there. So I cut the scales on those locations accordingly. I made them thinner and a lot easier to bend, and it works great. I like it. I love it. I'm into it. What I'm not into is how much this looks like it's made out of Cheetos. It's just that exact color. Because, Beta Ray Bill is pretty orange. But he's also like a slightly more tan orange. So I'm going to try to make the time to go over this with another couple light coats of kind of a tan paint to sort of drift the color in that direction and see what that does. As for the bracers were pretty simple. Now, I like the paint job that came out on these. Hopefully the camera can kind of pick that up, where I started with yellow craft foam. Like anytime I work with craft foam, I try to work with a base color that's similar to how it's painted. So, if it gets a chunk taken out of it, it's not going to look too weird. So that was just straight yellow craft foam painted like a golden yellow, so like a very dirty, grungy, non-shiny gold color, and then a very light brushing of a bright, shiny gold color on top of that. Light brushings counter to each other, which has given it this really interesting texture. I didn't get around to getting any kind of an interesting texture on the gray, and that's on my to-do list. Of course, I cut many holes in the bottom of the bracer, not strictly accurate, but close enough for airflow, because I knew I was going to need it, and grab one of the hands. So I've shown these a couple of times. These are the Tomar Ray Green Lantern hands, and they worked out pretty well. I didn't get around to adding any kind of internal structure to them to make them less floppy. That wasn't one of the highest things on my priority list, but it is still something I would like to do. One of the other things I would like to do is when these get sweaty, and they do, it's pretty much just a fact of life, they're really hard to get on and get off. And of course I've got to get them on and get them off if I'm going to take my mask off or if I'm going to do practically anything. So I'm thinking about, since these like cloth wrappings around the thumb are part of the costume's design, slitting these gloves along that and then adding Velcro or some other attachment method under that, so that it gives me a much easier, a much wider hole to get my hand in to pull these on and off. I've also had problems with the paint on these guys peeling off, which, yeah, I'll get real close in there. So yeah, any place they bend too much, the paint's coming off. So I've got to figure out a better painting solution. I'm going to do some looking around, see what advice I can find on that. Yeah, you kind of got to shimmy your way on out of those. So the helmet. Let's talk about the helmet, which, I did a little bit more work on. Mostly a good paint job. Yeah. Got to try to back up so that's framed well. So I mentioned I was having problems getting it to fit over Bill's face, which was hugging my head too close kind of problem. So what I did is I actually cut the helmet completely in half, popped it about a ½ inch apart, and then added a splint to hold the two halves together. And that helped a lot for, it looking good. But reattaching the helmet back together was a bit of a pain, and it ended up crooked. It's really hard to tell, for the most part, but it's pretty obvious to me, and it bothers me. Oh, and also I had a piece fall off of the back, so I gotta fix that too. But the paint job turned out pretty well. It's something like these kind of cartoony lines on brushed metal is something I've done a lot. I wouldn't necessarily say it's my trademark, but it might be on its way to becoming that. Now these were a couple of sheets of like pressed fiberboard glued together, and these are the lid's off of a Powerade bottle. So to disguise that effectively and to make the lines of this like work a lot better, I just added some flat aluminum wire to that, and that. Just those little touches make it look a lot more real and metallic and not fake. So yeah, that turned out relatively well, all things considered. Which, the other problem I had is the helmet. Anytime the helmet sat crooked on Bill's head, it looked so stupid. So I need to add magnets to the mask and to the helmet, so that they'll snap to where the helmet is exactly aligned and keep it there, and hopefully not tug on the mask itself too much. So let's talk about like the torso for a little bit, even though this was one of the parts that kind of ended up a lot more half-assed than the others. Again, largely due to constraints of time more than anything else. For the most part, like the design and this core like chest section turned out really well, and I'm happy with how that looks, and I will probably try to carry that over. But a lot of this lower stuff that just ended up attached onto a t-shirt instead of the other things I wanted to do with it looks terrible. It's not good. It's bad, and I need to fix it. I did try to add some little winks and nods to the design of Thor's Age of Ultron costume, which is still my favorite. Sorry, Ragnarok. Hopefully you change my mind on that. But yeah, this like textured bit here, and the like the silver beading on the blue lining of the chest piece. Yeah, that anybody who's built like Thor Age of Ultron armor has probably looked at those bits on his costume and is like, yeah, okay, I can kind of see. I don't know. Now, I talked briefly in the other video that I had to borrow a pair of pants to disguise how horribly I looked from the waist down in just the morph suit. So I have to fix that, and I have to address that, which is probably going to involve looking at some really interesting videos about tucking on the internet. That's gonna be fun. That's gonna be a good time. But I also need to actually like make thigh plates for the armor for that kind of undersuit Beta Ray Bill has, and I need to actually make boots for Beta Ray Bill because I did not. I just used my old Thor boots. Again, I procrastinated, and I ran out of time, and that is not good enough. I need this at some level to be like one of the best Beta Ray Bill costumes on the internet, because that's how I work. Whether or not it ends up that way is, but I need to put in that kind of effort, and it is not there yet. So I'll talk about the hammer again a little bit here, which, I think I mostly covered everything that was in this guy on the other video. But, yeah, it's still... That was way too close to the mic. I'm going to go ahead and back up and do that again. That's much better. It just makes me happy. Just the absurd squeak noise. There are a few things that just by their very nature of existing bring me so much joy as a squeaky hammer. Apparently. I just found this out about myself. Self-discovery through cosplay. So, what's my plan for Beta Ray Bill for fixing things? Well, it occurred to me during the last video that I never brought up a picture of my costume, so I'm going to bring up this costume here, which was this picture, nouns. This picture that was taken at Denver Comic-Con from 303 Magazine, and there's a link to the photographer on the screen now. It is probably the best picture of Bill I've seen, and it's not a great picture, and I say that as it's my fault. It's not the photographer's fault. He did his job, but there are a couple of problems in my stance where I kind of do that slightly side to the camera thing, which makes me look really scrawny, and that's not what I need from this. And looking straight at the camera, which with Beta Ray Bill's face is a bad idea. I should be going for more of a profile thing, because looking at it dead on, it doesn't look great, and it kind of looks weird. Yeah, those are the biggest things. So what I'm gonna do to fix the chest, to add some bulk, and then I'm gonna like build the undersuit from there, is I'm going to go back to that Briareos Pepakura thing from the replica props forum. Again, I think most of it's made by JF Customs, and there's a couple pieces for the total costume from other 3D models, which is why there's so many credits on that page. But I think the chest unfold was done by JF Customs, and of course I'm not printing out everything. I'm doing kind of a modified, stripped-down version of that, which will give me a really basic, like chest shape that kind of follows some of the basic lines of Bill's journey into mystery design. So I'm gonna strip it down and then kind of build it back up to what I want it to be from there. I think that about covers it. It is something I will try to keep you guys more in the loop of as I'm working on it, because I've done a lot. I won't have to do as much work as quickly to get this to where I want it to be, as in case I go to another convention in Colorado Springs in like a month and a half. Yeah, And even if I don't, then I still want it working well enough that I can take a couple really good pictures of it. So I will try to keep you more up to date, and up to date with a couple other... I think I'm going to do a few small projects instead of these big costume projects to just kind of, I don't know, unwind for kicks and giggles to get less stress out of what I'm doing. And I'll try to post those, and hopefully we'll all have a good time with that. So I'll see you guys there.